Welcome friends, today we learn about the builder pattern. So suppose we had a class called student. So this class student has some properties. For example, it has a string name, it has an integer age, it has a float for height, and it has a string for address. We have kept these properties as private because this is part of the encapsulation process. We'll talk more about encapsulation principle in a separate video. So it is obvious that this class will have a constructor. So we have the public constructor for the student class, which takes the string name, integer age, float height, and string address as arguments, and then it sets these arguments into the properties of the class. So it initializes name with name, age with age, height with height, and address with the address property of the class. So right now our class contains some properties, and it contains a constructor for setting those properties into the object of the class. Now suppose that we want to add two more properties into this class, which is the class of the student and the section of the student. So we add an integer type property class, and we add a string type property section. We'll have to modify the constructor. So our constructor will now take two more arguments, which is the integer class and the string section. So we are passing these arguments into the constructor, and then we need to initialize these properties in the constructor as well. So we are initializing the class and we are initializing the section as well. So you see, whenever we add some new properties to our student class, or in fact even if we remove some properties, we have to modify the constructor of the student class. So suppose we were using this constructor at 10 places in the code. So now with the addition of two new fields, we'll have to modify all these three constructors, otherwise they will give a compilation error. So we modify our constructors at places where we know the values that are to be passed. We'll be able to pass the values. For example, we know that Ravi is in class 12 section B, so we pass the value. We know Vikram is in class 13 section A, we pass the value. But for Amit we don't know, so we cannot pass that value here. And moreover, it might not be required to pass the values here, so we will be passing null in the case of Amit. Now suppose with the due course of time we had to add more fields into our class student. So we are adding those fields here. For example, we add list of hobbies for the student. We also add parents name in the form of list for the student, and there are maybe some other properties that we add for the student. So when we add these, again we have to modify our constructor to set all these values. So now with the addition of new fields, we again need to modify the places where we had called the constructors, and it might be at some places we need to set the new values, but generally we will be passing, or we would need to pass null values for the new fields. So our code will be highly bloated with null 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 at many places because of the new fields introduced in the student class for some new functionalities where they are actually set, but in the legacy places they will be passed as null. Now let's see, in order to implement the builder pattern, what should we do? So for this example, we'll take only four fields to start with in the student class. So we'll have the name, age, height, and address fields in the student class. And what we'll do is we'll make the constructor as a private constructor, so that whenever anyone wants to call the create an object of the student class, he is bound to use the builder. Now what is a builder? A builder is a static class inside the main model class, for in this case student. So it is a static class, and it also has similar variables or properties as the main class. So there they were name, age, height and address. Here also we have name, age, height and address. And along with having the similar properties, the builder has a method per property to set the property into the builder, not into the original class. So you can see we have with name method. It takes a name argument and it sets this name argument into the state of the builder, not into the state of the student class. And similarly it has with age, with height, with address. Means the general naming convention is using with the property name. So with age method, you can see again we are setting age into the state of the builder, not into the state of the student, and we're returning the builder from each method as well. And in the last we have another method, which is the build method. What does the build method do? It takes the state of the builder and it creates the student class. So it's creating a student object and setting all the properties of the student object using the state of the builder. So builder already have the name, so it is setting name. Builder have the age, so it is setting age. And wherever it is not having, it is simply set, builder is not having, so the null will be set into the student property. Basically build method is responsible for creating the student object. So this is a static class inside the model class, and it has with property names and the build method. Now let's see how do we use the builder pattern. So now if we want to create a student object using the builder pattern, we say student s is equal to new student dot builder. We create an object of the builder, and then we use the with name method to pass the name. We use the with age method to pass the age. Similarly, we use the with height method to pass the height, and with address method to pass the address. And then when we call the build method, then the actual student object is created, not before that. So this is how we use builder pattern. And advantage is, you can see if we now introduce a new field into the student object. For example, we introduce a list of hobbies as string types for the student. Now this calling code where we were creating a student app will not have any compilation issues which were there earlier. And the second problem that we showed, that we used to have to pass null objects. Now if we want to create a student with lesser properties, for example say just two properties, with name and with hobbies, so we don't need to bloat our code with unnecessarily null references. We can just pass the required properties, and then we can call the build method, and we'll have the student with those set of properties. So this is how do we implement and use the builder pattern. So friends, hope you would have liked this video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.